Alright, so in this particular lesson, I have a close reading teacher lesson plan that I want to teach from. This is about 4th or 5th grade, and it's in PDF format. It's about 10 pages, and there's some different stuff in here. There's obviously the teacher notes at the beginning, and then some posters and a few stories, but what I really want to focus on and teach from is this specific story here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my view board, and I'm going to start over here at the magic box. So the magic box, if you remember, is to import content, and so make sure you're on this icon. It's the default icon, it's the file icon, and then either on your hard drive or your cloud storage, just go navigate and find the content that you want to import. And so we're going to go get this PDF that's in my lesson folder, in my literacy folder. Here's that close reading, and we're just going to double tap to download this into my view board. So it will bring in all the pages, but I don't need all those pages. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use page management to basically delete my other pages. So down here in the main toolbar, you'll see the number 2 that tells me what page I'm on. If I click that or touch it, I get a kind of slide preview of all my slides. But I'm going to click this magnifying glass down here, and that's going to kind of give me a larger preview here of all my pages. And this is going to be nice because now I can go through and I can click on these pages that I want to remove. So I'm actually going to keep one of these posters with the annotations on it, but we're going to delete the rest of these pages and just keep the Wizard of Oz story. So now that I have them all selected, I just need to click this delete button here. It'll give you a little notification, click yes, and now you can see I have these 2 pages. Now this first page, you'll notice that in the PDF they didn't have this all the way to the side, so then it kind of imports funny. Just use your select tool, which is over here, remember it's the green arrow, and click on the object or touch it, and you'll notice that there's a lock icon on the top left. If you touch that, it unlocks it, and now it's an image that we can drag and move around. And so what I'm going to want to do is I want to crop this, and it's pretty big, so I'm actually going to shrink this before I try to crop it by dragging one of the corners. And then in the adorning menu, you'll see the crop button, so I'm going to click the crop, and then we'll just drag the corners over so that we get this kind of to where we want it. And then when you're finished, click the check mark button, and then that will update the image. Now, if this is something that you wanted to use over and over again in your lessons, don't forget that you can use the Save As button, which is the cloud and the up arrow, and then this lets you save it directly into your cloud storage to use again. So we're going to leave this here. I'm actually going to make it a little smaller and kind of drop it over in the bottom right corner. The next thing I want to do is I want to get this object onto that same page, so this image that was imported. So again, select it, and then in the top left, touch the unlock button. So now I can move it and crop it. But what I'm going to do this time is there's 2 parts to this. There's obviously the passage on top, but then there's a quiz, check for understanding at the bottom. And I want to use both of those, but I don't want them on the same page. So I really need 2 copies of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my adorning menu, and I'm going to click on the copy button. And then if I want to paste this, I just need to go down here to the floating toolbar, and you'll see the clipboard icon. This is for pasting. So I'll click that, and now I have 2 copies of my story. And I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it back on my first page. So I'm going to click the scissors in the adorning menu. This is the cut. So it's like copy, but it cuts it out, and then we'll touch the back arrow to go to our main page, and now we'll touch paste, and here's our passage. Now I don't want the questions on the bottom, so I'm going to use crop to crop this, so I basically can crop out the questions there, and then we'll click the check mark, and now I simply have the passage. And it is a little small, don't worry about that necessarily right now, we'll come back to that. Now I want to use the text that's in this passage here, but you'll notice that if I try to click on it, I can't actually select the text because this is just an image. When you import with my viewboard, it just imports it as an image. So I'm actually going to go back to the original document And I'm just going to click and drag the text to do a quick copy and get it all highlighted. And you can do Control C, or I'll just do a quick copy here. And then go back to my viewboard, and then in the main toolbar, find the text editor, and then just click somewhere on the canvas. And now you'll notice my font in the text editor is really big. I have that set by default. So let's go ahead and change our font to something smaller, because we don't actually need to be able to read this, and I'll show you why later. But let's get it to 16, and then we'll paste it, and it didn't paste to 16. So we'll just select all of it. So Control A to select everything, and then I'm going to choose 16, and that should make it nice and small. Now, I want you to notice that on this text, that it pastes it pretty good, but it does miss a couple parts. So notice this sentence here. Then he ran toward the sheds where, and then it does a return. Well, that's not correct. The sentence doesn't start. It's not a new line there. So I might need to edit a little bit of this. So I'm just going to click there and delete it, and then add a space. So now it's basically back in line, and then go check here. You can see the same thing. And I'm just going to kind of go through this and make sure. Let me move this object down here out of the way so it's a little easier for us to read. So I'm just going to go through and check, and you'll also know that it for some reason messed up on floor, so it should highlight them if any of the spelling is messed up. But this is really worth it. I'll show you what tool we're going to be able to use by copying and pasting. You just got to do a little bit of work to fix it. So we'll come in here and just redo these lines and make sure all the spelling is correct. And this looks pretty good. Now let's move this over. And you'll notice it's pretty long, pretty wide. It's no big deal. We can actually even shrink this smaller by using the arrow or the select button, by clicking on it and then just dragging the corners, and we can make this even smaller. Because we don't need to read it. We're actually going to read this passage here, the actual PDF that we imported. This is going to be for a different tool. So now we have that. Let's move up our closed reading annotations so they're a little closer and bigger, and we essentially have our first part done here. All right, so before we get started teaching this, let's remember that this object that we added, we haven't locked it yet. Anytime you're going to have something where you might annotate or erase over, always lock it. So watch this. If I annotate on this and then I get my eraser out, see how it erases the image and the annotation? So let's go back. Now this time I want to lock the object with the lock button in the adorning menu. Now when we annotate on something like this, if I go to the eraser, notice that it just erases the annotation. It doesn't erase the locked object. So let's go ahead and unlock this as well. And so now we're ready to teach this lesson, and you might be wondering, why did we do that copy and paste of the text in the top? Right, well, if I click on this text, you'll notice that one of the icons in there is the Immersive Reader. And so if I click on that, it will open the Immersive Reader. Now it might open it in full screen like this. You can always minimize it by pressing this button in the bottom right, and then you can drag the corner to resize that if you want to. So again, just click the text, click the book, that's going to open it. And Immersive Reader is going to let us have text to speech, and it's going to focus or highlight in on the text. It also allows us to go in and highlight things like nouns and verbs, all those kinds of things. And so what we're going to do is we are going to press play so we can listen to the reading.
There's a cyclone coming,
Then I can zoom in over here on the text and we can highlight important parts. So for example, I'm going to use the hand. So remember infinite canvas, that lets you zoom in. I'm just going to do a 2-finger pinch, and that's going to let me zoom in close to the text. I still have my Immersive Reader up over here on the right, which allows me to continue reading the story and pause it whenever I want to, but then I can come in here and make my annotations. So I can put a C here over cyclone because maybe I have a connection to that, and I can continue reading the story, and then if I use infinite canvas or the hand, I can scroll up and down, and you'll notice that it keeps my annotations. Then I can do a 2-finger pinch and zoom to zoom back out. And then when I'm done with the Immersive Reader, I can just close it. So by adding the text in or copying and paste the text in, that allows me to access Immersive Reader. I don't necessarily have to do that for this particular lesson, but I can. Now, I know we have covered a lot of content. This is turning into a long video, but I do want to talk just a little bit about quizzing and using this quiz down here. So same process. I'm going to crop this so I can get rid of the passage because all I really care about are the questions this time. And for these multiple choice questions, I'm going to use the pull quiz feature, which is here in the magic box. So it's over here on the far right. It's the question mark and the check mark. And you'll see here that I can ask multiple choice questions. So I'm just going to move the window over. Then I'm going to click multiple choice and I'm going to type in the first question. Who went to check the cows and horses? And then the options, I'm just going to put in the options here. So Dorothy, Toto, Uncle Henry, Auntie Anne. And if you happen to be reading the story while I was doing this, you'll see that it was Uncle Henry, so I can check his name, and then we can add a timer, so we'll just leave it at 1 minute. That seems like plenty of time. Then we'll touch the check mark here, and then that will add the question to our list. Now, if I want to show the questions, I can click the slider, and then that will remind me what question I've already added. To add our second question, I just click the plus button here, go back to multiple choice, and now we're going to type in our next question. Now you'll notice on these questions that all the multiple choice answers are the same, so it's always Dorothy, Toto, Uncle Henry, and Auntie Em. If you want to reuse a question, all you have to do is click on that question, so like who hid under the bed, and then I can hit the copy or duplicate button up here, and now I have another question of who hid under the bed. And then all I have to do is click on it. Now you'll notice it's hidden because it's assuming kids are maybe looking at it. Just click on the question that you copied and then click on the pencil, and then this will let you edit it. So now we don't have to edit the multiple response, we just edit the question. And we remember that Dorothy sat on the floor, and then we can do the check mark to update our question, and now you'll see it's updated. So now we have our 3 questions. We can now close this, and remember these questions will save when we save our lesson. Now for the sequence of events part, I want to make kind of a fun sorting game. Instead of just having kids come up here and write 1, 2, 3, 4, I want to make some objects that they can drag and rearrange. And so I'm going to do this in 2 parts. First, we're going to use the text editor to type the statement. So the first one is Toto ran around the room barking, and that'll be our first response. And let's make it a little bigger by changing the font size, and we'll close the text editor. And instead of just having text, I want to actually use an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the embed browser, and I'm going to use the Google search, and I want to search for Toto, and so he was a terrier dog. We'll go into our image search, and these pictures are just of terriers. They're just sitting, so let's do running because the statement is Toto ran around the room barking. And let's see here. So we can use this image here, but remember you actually got to click on the image to get the large preview on the right, or you'll get a low quality image. So then we can just click and drag that on the canvas. And then what we're going to do is we're going to minimize the browser because I'm going to want to come back and use the embed browser a few more times for my images. So instead of clicking the X, that's going to close it. I'm going to click the minus to minimize it. And let's crop this so it's a little smaller. I don't want it so big. So now we have our image, and I want to put this image with the text. So I'm going to drag it above the text just like this. And then I'm going to use my select tool to click and drag around it. And then you'll see here that I can actually group these objects together. And when I click the group button, now when I click on this, it all moves together. Now, instead of typing over and over and over and over again, I'm just going to use the copy button to be able to paste and get another copy. Now, because these are grouped, I'm going to have to ungroup them, but this is going to let me go back and edit the text. So I can delete this image, and now we can add the next sequence. So the house rose into the air. Now let's go to our embed browser and let's just do a search and try to find that image. So let's do a search for Wizard of Oz, house in tornado. And here we can see a pretty good image of it rising up. So again, click on the image and then click and drag onto the canvas. Remember to minimize so you can come back in a second. Let's crop this. So we take out these black spaces here. And then we'll resize it so it's more kind of in alignment with the text. Same process, select both, and then click the group button. So now that we have all of our sequence of events, I'm going to delete our original question worksheet, and let's drag our images over here. We'll kind of mix them up a little bit. Notice that they're layered, so they will kind of stack on top of each other. And we could use the text tool or whatever we want to, but I'm just going to keep this simple. I'm going to use the pen tool, make my pen a little thicker, and we'll just sequence these in numbers. So we'll do 1, then let's do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now for this activity, all kids have to do is find the image. They can read the text on the bottom, and then they can start putting these in order. So they can go here like number 1. And so we have a simple activity where we have the close reading. Remember, we added the text so that we can do Immersive Reader. Don't forget that we have the poll quiz. Remember, students go to your portal to participate in the poll quiz. So in the top left corner where your board name is, that's what your portal is. This is my portal, but that's what your portal would be. So students log into there, and then you can go to the poll quiz and hit play for each question. It'll do one question at a time, and students can respond on their device. Or if students are in class, they can come up and physically drag these around to complete the sequence of events.